of the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs Help for Homeowners. With the COVID-19 pandemic reaching almost every area of our lives, the threat of losing one's home is near, if not near, it should be at the top of everyone's concerns. Today, we're going to discuss the most up-to-date rules, regulation, and available financial assistance options which may be available to property owners who are impacted by the pandemic. Next slide. The Department of Consumer and Business Affairs in the County of Los Angeles, our mission is listed here to promote a fair and vibrant marketplace. We serve consumers, businesses, and communities through education, advocacy, and complaint resolution. The department has been serving the County of Los Angeles, consumers, and businesses since 1976. Next slide. Today, my name is Samuel Luquin. I will be presenting the first half of the presentation. My colleague Leticia Andrade will be presenting the second half. Both of us have been working with the foreclosure prevention team for a little less than 10 years. You can reach our department directly by contacting us by email at homehelp@dcba.lacounty.gov or by visiting our website, dcba.lacounty.gov, or by reaching us directly by phone at 833-238-4450. Next slide. So what I think what the main goal of our topic today is around the idea of foreclosure, but more truly is the idea of correct information or trustworthy information. I think within our department, we've mostly been hearing individuals reach out to us and say that they've heard maybe one program has the ability to help them come out of foreclosure, or maybe somebody can guarantee that they can save their property from foreclosure. In reality, what we really aim to do with these webinars is make sure that the proper information is in fact provided to the public. Now, starting with that, we look at the idea of what is foreclosure. Technically, foreclosure is the legal process that's used by a lender in order to recover the balance of a loan whenever a property owner fails to meet an obligation of the loan. Most typically, an obligation of the loan that's most often triggering a foreclosure is going to be a missed payment. However, there can be other things that can trigger a foreclosure, as we'll see in a bit. Next slide. Now, in California, there are two different types of foreclosures. One of them is going to be a judicial foreclosure. The other one's going to be a non-judicial foreclosure. Now, a judicial foreclosure most typically is going to involve a mortgage. Now, a mortgage is going to be a contract between a borrower and a lender. There's going to be only those two parties there. If the lender does in fact decide that they need to foreclose, they're going to need to go to court. They're going to need to sue to begin that process. Now, a non-judicial foreclosure, which is really most common in California, a deed of trust is going to be involved. Now, the difference between a deed of trust and a mortgage is there's going to be a third party involved called the trustee. So the borrower and the lender or the trustee engage in this contract. And what in fact happens is the borrower is going to convey the power to sell over to the trustee. Now, if the borrower does default on their loan or any of the obligation of the loan, the trustee is going to actually receive a request from the lender to begin the foreclosure process. Now, what's different about the non-judicial part, as you can guess, is that the trustee or the lender do not need to engage the court system to begin the foreclosure process. Like I mentioned before, in California, both of these processes will occur, but more typically, it's going to be California is going to be a non-judicial state. Next slide. Now, this is a really simple and sort of a high-level overview of what the foreclosure process looks like. And again, it's something that a lot of people don't understand, but being in foreclosure and then being foreclosed on are two different things. Being in foreclosure is going to be a long process. Time-wise, really not too long, but again, it's a process. Being foreclosed on would be when the process finished. Okay, so the foreclosure is really going to start with the first step, which is called the notice of default. A notice of default is the very beginning of the process of foreclosure. This document is going to be recorded with the county registrar recorder's office. And again, it's recorded after the borrower fails to meet an obligation or a term of the loan. The second step would be after the notice of default is not satisfied. Most typically 90 days are going to go by before a notice of trustee sale is going to be recorded. Now, this notice of trustee sale is going to have a little bit more information on top of not just the default amount, but what it's going to take to get the loan to come current. Now, after the trustee sale is recorded, the auction date is going to be set. 4 options really, or four consequences or outcomes of the auction are going to take place from there. The auction can technically, it can be postponed. Maybe the lender and the borrower are coming to some sort of agreement or are coming, good on their loan. So the auction might be pushed back. The auction can be canceled, meaning the lender and the borrower maybe came to some sort of agreement. Maybe the borrower filed bankruptcy. Maybe they, something might have happened. It was canceled. Or if it does in fact sell, it's gonna sell to one of 2 parties. It could be sold to a third person or a third party where this individual would take over ownership of the property. It could, if for whatever reason a third party does not bid on the unit or on the property, then it would actually revert to the lender, and that's what's called real estate owned property. Both of those last 2 examples of the property being sold back to the bank or sold to a third party would trigger what's called a trustee's deed upon sale. This document, in fact, transfers the property to the winning bidder. Like mentioned before, by default, it'll be the lender if nobody, sort of meets the threshold of the winning bid. And that's going to have a lot of different information on it for, legally who would be the owner at that time. Next slide. So like mentioned before, the notice of default is going to have certain information on it that's going to be very important. And this is where, we'd like to let people know that a lot of bad information can be sort of pushed around or maybe disseminated throughout either the community or to property owners, about what's going on, because it's, again, the notice of default is public information after it's recorded with the recorder's office. But the lender is going to record a notice of default after the borrower fails to meet the terms of their loan. Again, it is the start of the foreclosure process. It's only the start. At this point, this is where an individual is strongly encouraged to reach out to their lender directly, if they haven't already, to discuss applying for foreclosure prevention options. Next slide. Now, most commonly, notices of default are going to look sort of similar to what you see in front of you now. Copies of these documents are, again, recorded with the recorder's office, and as we're going to discuss in a little bit, they're mailed out to property owners and people that are involved. But it's important to understand that what's on these documents is really what triggers solicitations to property owners when they're in trouble. It is going to have the property address on here. It is going to reference the specific loan that was in default. It will have the property owner's name and how much they're in default, and then when it was recorded. I mean, it's all very important information for somebody who's looking to solicit their services. Next slide. So the notice of trustee sale is the following document that's going to be recorded. You have to understand that lenders are not allowed to record this document at least 90 days after the notice of default has been recorded. More important information on this document is it's going to set a hard and fast auction date. If nothing's done, this is when the auction date the auction will take place to sell the property, so that the lender can come current on their obligation or on your obligations. At this time, it is still strongly encouraged for property owners to apply for foreclosure prevention options. The reason why we put limited there is because the lender is going to be limited by how much time they have to review documentation before they can, the auction date is actually set. Next slide. So this notice of trustee sale, this is another common document that's used, or sort of, I don't want to say cookie cutter, but this is, what a typical notice of trustee sale is going to look like. It's recorded with the county recorder's office. Like I had mentioned before, the information that's there is very important. Just like the notice of default, it's going to have the property owner's name. It's going to have the address. It's going to have the full amount of the loan that's due. It's not just going to be what a property owner is behind in payments. It's going to show actually everything that's owed to pay the loan off. It's going to have an auction date, a time, and a place. So that is something that a lot of people are going to be interested in if they're looking to bid on the property. But also, again, individuals that are soliciting their services, so property owners, they're going to use that information to get you to subscribe to whatever it is that they're offering. Next slide. Now, like we had mentioned before, the trustee's deed upon sale is the document that's used when the property does sell at the foreclosure auction. This document is important because it indicates who in fact did purchase the property. Like we had mentioned before, the importance of getting correct information. This document itself really shows if somebody is in fact the new owner. A lot of times when properties do go to the foreclosure auction, individuals may or businesses may claim that they own the property, provide documentation that looks real or legitimate. This document, though, will show the real owner because it's going to be recorded by the trustee. So to let the public know that yes, the property did sell and this is who it sold to. Again, by default, this will be the lender if no bid higher than the lender's opening bid is received. So if the property or the debt is at $200,000 for whatever reason and nobody decides to buy it, the lender's going to take that back on their books. The trustee's deed upon sale will indicate that. At this point, like we had mentioned before for the previous two documents with the notice of default and the notice of trustee sale, that there were options or that we had encouraged individuals to apply for foreclosure prevention options. At this point, I think counseling is really the best step to decide what's in the future for these property owners. Next slide. Now, this is again a typical copy of a trustee's deed upon sale. It will show the minimum bid that the property sold for. It will show the actual bid that was accepted, which can be important when a property owner, does lose. Unfortunately, may lose their property to the auction. But if the property did in fact sell for more than what they owed, it will indicate on this document, what that number was or what that amount was, and then how to sort of go about claiming what's called excess proceeds. Again, it's going to have the identity of the organization or the individual on this document. It'll have the date that it's sold. And then it'll also be, I think there's, again, it's also going to have the property address and, other things related to the sale. Next slide. So after the foreclosure, what we did mention, which was different from the notice of default and the notice of trustee sale, was counseling moving forward. Most typically, property owners or somebody who's occupying that property is going to receive what's called the notice to vacate. Now, if the occupier of this property is in fact there, they're going to receive what's called, and they only have the right to receive, a 3-day notice to vacate the property. If in fact the property or the property is inhabited at that point by a bona fide tenant, they could potentially receive a longer time before the eviction. Typically, it's going to be 90 days. But again, the idea of verifying your tenancy and the legitimacy of your tenancy is going to be one of the deciding factors on how much time you receive. Technically, now tenants will have the right of first refusal to purchase the property after the trustee's sale. So if a tenant decides that, or figures out that they had lost the property, or the property was lost and they want to purchase the property, they will have the right of first refusal. The notice of trustee sale document will have information on it for the tenant to call within a certain time frame, prove that they can afford the property, or at least have how would you say it? Certified funds that they can make the loan and purchase the property, and they'll be given the opportunity to do so. Outside of that, normally it's going to be what's called a cash for keys negotiation. If a property is occupied by an individual, normally the individual is going to be interested. Well, I'm sorry, not the individual. The new owner is going to be interested in discussing terms of the property being vacated. They call it gracefully, and that's really encouraged because it's going to be a stressful time. Normally, new buyers of these properties, they understand that the whole process is stressful, and they really want to make sure that vacating the property goes as smoothly as possible. So they will be interested in offering maybe some money or a little bit extra time to avoid the eviction process. Sometimes they run the eviction process side by side, but sometimes they say, okay, well, we'll come to an agreement. You leave the property, and then we'll give you a certain amount of money and maybe a little bit more time than legally is required, and let's just get this done. This is one of the services that our department does help individuals go through. Um, so we'll talk about that in a second. Next slide. So another thing when it comes to the idea of receiving good information, receiving trustworthy information, and that's one of the things that we're seeing a lot right now, especially with the way that COVID is dealing with foreclosure moratoriums and eviction moratoriums. How do you know where you're going to find good, trustworthy help? How do I know if I'm in foreclosure? What if the lender doesn't speak to me? Or what if I don't maybe have the time to speak to them? So technically in the County of Los Angeles, the homeowner notification program, which was established in 1996, is set up to alert homeowners of recorded documents or newly recorded documents that were recorded against their properties. Now, this program applied to grant deeds, quitclaim deeds, and deeds of trust. A grant deed and a quitclaim deed are going to be documents that deal with the changing in title, of a property. A deed of trust is going to be the document, like mentioned before, that's used to secure a loan against a property. So if a loan is taken out against a home, or a property, or a change in title occurs, property owners are going to be made aware by the county themselves. Now, the law requires that a notice of the recording has to be mailed to the parties or to the recording party or any party involved who it affects within 30 days. At this point, the document does come with an insert, like as shown here, providing information, counseling, and assistance free of charge. Okay, that's one of the things that we really pride ourselves on, is that the information that's given is not only true, but an explanation or assistance is provided by our department. Next slide. Now, in 2013, the Enhanced Homeowner Notification Program was born. It came through SB 62, which expanded the homeowner notification program. And in addition to sending out documents or copies of documents that change title, like a grant deed or a quitclaim deed, or a loan being secured against a property in the form of a deed of trust, now anytime a notice of default or a notice of trustee sale was recorded, copies of these documents would be sent to property owners as well. The purpose really was to make sure that property owners not only understand where they are when it comes to the foreclosure process, but where to seek free help. Now, SB 827 actually reduced the time to mail these notices, the notice of default, from 20 days to 14 days. The Assembly Bill 1106 actually extended the program for an additional 10 years. So it looks like we're going to be going till about 2023. I believe, if I'm correct. Next slide. Now, the notice of default is again, like mentioned before, it's the very beginning of the foreclosure process, and again, it is only the beginning. Uh, Property owners who are actually looking at their mail, no matter how stressful it is, and are doing their best to open up a conversation with their lenders, they're going to be the most successful. Typically it's going to take 90 days to be delinquent when it comes to the notice of default being recorded. I know that the lender is required to do what's called their due diligence by attempting to contact the property owner, by attempting to make sure that they provide the information of what they may qualify for. And again, it's important to remember that these documents, when they're recorded with the recorder's office, they're public information. So, like I mentioned before, all of the things that are listed on that document, like a property address or your name, who your lender is, how much you're in default, this is all made public. This is where a lot of the solicitation of these different services come from. Services which promise that they can save your property from foreclosure, or that promise that they can, do, maybe, I know a common one is a forensic audit, and they can make it even sometimes where you don't have to pay. It's really not. That may be. I'm not in a position to say that that's not true. However, Most importantly, you have to understand where you get this information from, and what it is that it's doing, or what kind of information that you're giving that's maybe contradicting what information you're receiving from your lender. At this point, speaking with your lender is the most important thing. Applying for what's called a mortgage assistance program is most typically done by speaking with your lender, not an outside party. A request for mortgage assistance application is typically provided by a lender. This is to be understood as a request, and it's an application. It's not always something that's guaranteed. Mostly, it's going to be a process of being reviewed for your of your financial situation being reviewed, and then on top of that, what the amount of money that you owe against the property. You're going to want to look for reliable help. There are cases, or there are organizations that are certified by the federal government through Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Our department does in fact help individuals understand where they are, help them speak with their lenders, and help them discover what options are available to them. And another thing is the importance of deadlines that we really try to stress as much as possible. These applications are time sensitive, all of them. They typically are going to require, recent pay stubs, recent bank statements, recent tax returns, and it is important to get all of these things all at once over to the lender so that they can review them, because if most people do get paid every 2 weeks, and if don't get a pay stub in on time, or maybe you forget one, a pay stub can expire. It might not be the most recent pay stub. So, and then on top of that, because the California foreclosure process is so quick, you really don't have a lot of time to deal with submitting the documentation as it's needed. Next slide. So the foreclosure prevention services that are provided by the Department of Consumer Affairs, that are free, again, our department does have a unit that's actually dedicated to doing this. I myself and Letty herself do work in this unit. We're here. Our main goal really is to assist homeowners in preventing or avoiding the foreclosure of their property. Like I mentioned before, with the importance of receiving correct information, is every situation is different. We do these webinars and we do these information blasts to attract as many people as we can, but until we get down to an individual situation, maybe why they're behind or what they're looking for, what their goals are, there's not going to be something that we can say to cover or to blanket everybody's situation. Our department does provide individual attention with an assigned counselor. And the goal really here is to open a dialogue with the lender, between the property owner and the lender, to see what in fact their foreclosure alternative options are. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's not always keeping the property, but making sure that everything that a property owner is owed, that they're at least reviewed for, and that they understand what's on the table. Next slide. Okay, now with that there, I'm going to go ahead and hand off the presentation to my colleague, Letty Andrade. Letty?
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for all that. Okay, so I'm going to continue on here. So here, the end of the CARES Act. So under the CARES Act, if you were due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and if you had a federally backed mortgage, you have the right to request forbearance for up to 18 months. You didn't need to submit additional documentation to qualify for this forbearance. All you had to do was inform your servicer that you had a pandemic-related financial hardship. Unfortunately, the CARES Act expired June 30th, 2021. Lenders move forward with foreclosures. When the forbearance expires, property owners may not have the funds necessary to become current. It is important that you open up the communication with your servicer if you are still struggling with your mortgage payment. Like mentioned before, once you are in foreclosure, it becomes public information. You may be approached by individuals or companies that guarantee foreclosure services. Remember that foreclosure prevention is not guaranteed by anyone but your lender or servicer. Also, it is illegal for a mortgage consultant to charge an upfront fee for mortgage assistance. Next slide. Assembly Bill number 3088. This is the Tenant, Homeowners, and Small Landlord Relief and Stabilization Act of 2020. Prior to AB 3088, borrowers with non-federally backed loans who were experiencing a financial hardship due to the COVID-19 pandemic were not receiving aid because the CARES Act only protected federally backed loans. AB 3088 extended the protections to include non-federally backed loans. These protections were only afforded to first liens. The property must be a 1 to 4 unit property and does not need to be occupied by the homeowner. If a request for forbearance is submitted and consequently denied, the lender, like the federally backed mortgage, must provide a detailed reason naming the specific reason for the default. Next slide. So there are a few programs available right now that offer mortgage relief to the homeowners that have been impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. The Department of Consumer and Business Affairs has partnered with Neighborhood Housing Services of LA County and its network counselors to provide foreclosure prevention counseling services to property owners of LA County. Approved applicants can receive up to $30,000 to help offset the mortgage delinquencies. The program began on April 12, 2021, and it is only for those properties that are located in the supervisorial districts of 1, 2, and 3. Next slide. To be eligible for the program, like mentioned, it had to be in the supervisorial district 1, 2, and 3. Residents of City of LA are not eligible for this program. Homeowners must demonstrate a COVID-19 related hardship. Each homeowner's individual situation is different, so it's very important that you call or apply online to discuss the qualifying for assistance. In addition, property owners of one unit can have a loan balance up to $726,525. For property owners of 2 to 4 units, they can only have a loan balance up to $1 million. Next slide. So for the LA County Mortgage Relief Fund, you can contact the Neighborhood Housing Services of LA. And here is listed the phone numbers and also the website. For this program, there is a workshop that you have to attend. So it's very important that if you have access to the internet, you might want to visit their website and apply for the workshop. Next slide. Another program available is the California Mortgage Relief Fund. This program was established to mitigate financial hardships after January 1st, 2020, associated with the COVID-19 pandemic by providing funds to eligible property owners. The program is free and the funds do not need to be repaid. Next slide. So the goal for the California Mortgage Relief Program is to prevent mortgage delinquencies, defaults, foreclosures, loss of utility or home energy services, and to prevent displacements of homeowners experiencing financial hardship. Some of the requirements, okay, I'm sorry, next slide. Oh, okay, so some of the requirements for this program, you can't have a past due amount of more than $80,000 at the time of the application submission. You must own a single family home, condo, or permanently affixed manufactured home. And you can also, for this California Mortgage Relief Fund, there has been some new changes. So they have modified the past due requirement. Before, there were, in order to be eligible, if you were past due prior to December 27, 2021, that date has changed now. So now they have, if you have missed at least 2 payments before June 30th of 2022, you can apply for the program or see if you're eligible. Also, the threshold for the program qualifications has been adjusted, and they have also included assistance for past due property taxes. So if you are or have missed at least 1 payment prior to May 31st of 2022, you can receive up to $20,000 to cover the past due property tax payments. So on this slide, you have the contact information. If you did not qualify before for the California Mortgage Relief Program, you are encouraged to apply again since there has been changes to the program. So you might want to apply again to see if you qualify now. And so the phone number is at 877-922-5432, and their website is listed there. Next slide. As mentioned before, our office, we are here to assist as well. We can help homeowners in communicating with their lenders if they're having any difficult time with their mortgage payments. We do not offer financial assistance, but we can help with the process of applying for any mortgage assistance that that lender might have available for you. Our phone number is at 833-238-4450, and our website is listed, and our services are completely free. Next slide. So this concludes our presentation, and we will now answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Letty, for that information. Kevin, by any chance, do we have any questions, or is there anything else that somebody might like to bring up at this point?
Hi, Sam. So far, we do not have any questions from the public, but I invite any of those who are watching to go ahead and type your questions there in the chat box. And if not, perhaps we can answer some frequently asked questions.
Okay, great. I think that one of the most frequent questions we get is, and it goes back to everything that we've been sort of reiterating, is how do I know that my property is in fact in foreclosure? Receiving that notice of default, or maybe somebody tries to duplicate it, giving us a call never hurts. We do have access to the property, to the Register Recorder's office to look up to see if the property actually has a document recorded against it, like a notice of default. Our department also does have an investigations unit. If you're disputing the legitimacy of a document that's recorded, such as a notice of default, but like I had mentioned in the past, every situation is really very different, very complicated. It's hard to put everybody in one basket or in one area. So I encourage you, if you do have a question or you do want to talk about it, maybe you don't want to talk about it on the webinar, give us a call. Talk to somebody who knows, what actually is going on, and find legitimate and I guess you could say trustworthy information. So I think with saying that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our presentation. Thank you to everybody who has joined. Thank you to the presenters. Kevin, thank you for putting this together for us. Again, our information is there by phone or by email. Even if you were to do a search on the World Wide Web of the County of LA Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, you won't have to look long. We have a plethora of services. Give us a call if you have any questions, and enjoy the rest of your day. Kevin, thank you.